I wanted to create something that would help all of the people that are working either full-time or making a portion of their income in our community, and give them the resources, the tips, the tricks, the access, so that they could continue doing their business.
You're listening to the Aerial Hour, episode number 21. The Aerial Hour is a weekly podcast where I interview aerial entrepreneurs and professionals within our industry. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Aerial Hour. One day I'll figure out something else to say at the beginning of the show, but until then, here we are. Today I am joining you from St. Louis, and I am so excited to be here. And of course, getting a couple of interviews. Before I get to today's episode, let me share all the things with you. First, of course, is to follow us on social media. If you haven't already done so, check out our Instagram and Facebook page to stay up to date with our latest travels. I definitely post more on my stories, so make sure you follow us. And please write us a review on Apple Podcasts. I really love going in and reading your favorite parts of the show and what you like most, so please continue to write them. And if you haven't already done so, check out our new website page. I've updated pretty much everything, included some reviews, some episode highlights, and more, so you can see everywhere on the map we're listened to. So head over to theaerialhour.com, check that out, as well as show notes for each episode. In today's episode, we're doing things slightly differently. Today's interview features Colleen Jolly from the International PoleCon. Now, typically, I only do in-person recordings, and this is for a couple of reasons. I think this lends to that feeling that you're just sitting in with us. And I do this for a couple of reasons. I think that being in person really gives people a chance to feel like they're in the room with us having these conversations. It also provides way better audio quality, and I get to know the people and be in their space and see everything they built. But for Colleen Jolly, I'll make that exception because this news that she has to share with all of us is very exciting and relevant and needed. If you aren't familiar with Colleen Jolly, she's the owner of the International PoleCon. She also has an extensive history in the corporate world, in which she's taken her skills and applied them to the pole industry, which we'll talk more about later. During this episode, we talk about previous PoleCons as well as this year's, which is going to be slightly different. This year, we're having a virtual PoleCon, which is very exciting, and that's happening October 17th, 2020, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And again, that's virtually, so everyone can go. This event is going to have seminars, workshops, panels, and end with an evening showcase. We talk about the platform that she's using to host this event, as well as who's presenting it, which is a new trade association that Colleen is starting called the IPIA, which is the International Pole Industry Association. The IPIA is there to support businesses in the pole industry. We go into the details of why this is important, what they're going to do, and how it's all going to happen in this episode. So I highly recommend staying tuned. If you want to check out the website, you can head over to poleassociation.org and follow them on Instagram at poleassociation. And if you want to see these links and more, head over to theaerialhour.com and check out our show notes where I'll include all the links mentioned here. Okay, that's it. I think I've covered everything. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the episode. I'll see you on the other side. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Aerial Hour. Today, I am in Tennessee, and my guest is in Washington?
Just outside Washington.
Just outside of Washington. Today, I'm joined by Colleen Jolly, and we're in two different locations, but it's only because we have so much exciting information to share with you. So how are you doing today, Colleen?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm good. Super excited to sit down and chat with you about all the things that are happening because there's a lot of them.
Yes.
Yes. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do in this industry?
Oh, we only got an hour.
Right? Seriously.
Well, most people know me as the CEO, or the HBIC, as the term goes, of PoleCon. So that's what I'm primarily known for in this industry. I also teach at two different studios in the Washington, D.C. area, Fit for Polars and My Body Shop. I also teach online with 123polling.com. I also do voiceovers for 123polling.com. So if you're thinking to yourself that my voice sounds familiar, I have told you to put the ribbon on your same side, wrist and ankle several times. Additionally, I help some folks in the pole community with their marketing. I work with Liquid Motion on their marketing. I help 123 Polling with their social media, and have just started working with another apparel company in the pole space. So lots of ways I interact. I've built a couple folks' websites in the pole space as well. I perform, I compete in the pole industry. Boy, is that it? I also have some corporate, I don't know if the corporate's the side hustle or the pole is the side hustle at this point.
Wow, right.
Yes, so I do quite a bit in this industry.
Yeah. So what time do you get up in the morning? Like, do you ever sleep? I mean,
get asked that question a lot. I have really good time management skills. I always have, and no personal life. So that those two things make it really easy to work a lot. But I'm usually up in the morning. I have clients in Europe, so I'm usually up early to catch calls with them, and then working late teaching at the studio. So I'm a 7-day a week, 12, 14-hour operation.
Yeah. How did you initially find pole dancing?
Totally by accident. Probably the way a lot of people find pole. A friend got me into it, and I know a lot of people go on Groupon, and we didn't quite start on Groupon, but we had been dancing together in a Bollywood dance troupe, which I started on a lark because I'm not a dancer. I don't have a dance background. And there was a class offered through my alma mater. And so I went, and it was super fun. And I met some really great people. And one of those peoples said, let's try this pole dancing thing. And I said, I don't know. Like, I don't want to wear shorts. Like, I'm really a prude. That's someone called me pro ho the other day, which I think is like the cutest term. And I am. I'm very like pro, everybody do your thing. Like, you do you. But inside, I'm like super prudish. So we went, and I wore long sleeves and long pants, and my friend did okay. I did not do okay. I had no grip strength. I couldn't open jars. I just kept sliding off the damn pole. It was terrible. And she said, let's just stay, and you could watch the next class. It was sort of an open studio concept, no waiting room. And we watched the next class, and those folks were flipping themselves upside down. And so I said, well, like, how long, did it take you to do that? And they said a couple of months. And I thought, that's you're lying to me. And my friend said, well, I got a couple of months. So that became the thing that we did. We would go to brunch, and then we would go to pole class once a week. And at some point, I just decided that I loved this and wanted to keep going and exploring and go multiple times a week and buy a pole for my house. And one thing led to another. And my friend has long since dropped out of pole dancing, but I will always be thankful that she introduced a very unlikely candidate to the pole industry.
I love that. And you took over PoleCon in 2014, correct?
Yep. I officially purchased the event in 2014, and the first event that I ran was the New Orleans 2015 event.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so how long was it what year did you start dancing?
I started in 2011.
Oh, yeah. And so after you'd been dancing for a couple of years, you went to your first PoleCon, I think I saw in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And did you just like fall in love with the event, or?
Oh my God. I went with my studio had a troupe. So I really wanted to perform. I had been performing with this Bollywood dance troupe and loved it, got the bug. I've always done a lot of public speaking, but I've never done any sort of dance performance. So I really found that it was similar, that I like being on stage talking while I like being on stage dancing. So when this opportunity came up to be part of the studio troupe, I said, sure, let me do it. Met some great people. My roommate turned out to be the owner of the studio that I now teach at, my very good friend, Nicole. And we had this great time at troupe. And what had happened was that all of the people who had signed up to PoleCon didn't show up. And PoleCon has always had a lot of performances. And when I took over PoleCon, I arranged the performances into thematic showcases. Before me, it was a little more like here and there. Like you'd see a troupe, and then you'd see a pole star, and then you'd see, a completely different style, and then, et cetera. Now, one of my first pole moms, Crystal, was the stage manager. And she came up to Nicole and I and said, you're pole cleaning because nobody has shown up. And so we did. We wound up pole cleaning for just about the entire PoleCon. We met so many people. We had so much fun. I was so tired. and I loved it. I said, this is my thing. And Crystal is still the stage manager for PoleCon. She is still also my very good friend and still our stage manager.
That's awesome. What made you initially decide to take it over the event?
I had gotten married in 2011, and I realized I'm really good at planning events. I've always been really good at logistics. In my previous career, the company, I owned a visual communications company with offices in the US and UK. And my primary function, in addition to sales, along with my business partners, was what we call air traffic control. And air traffic control maintained an awareness of all of the projects from a high level. So at any time I could be deploying, assets to work on a project. I could be dealing with a customer with a challenge, their issue. And our company was called the 24-hour company.
Okay.
Because we did work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, supporting the federal contractor community, mostly defense contractors. So a lot of high dollar value projects. So these are the billions of dollar projects you hear about on the news. We were supporting the people who were looking to win those. So very high stress. And I was really good at all of these things. So I was, was doing this, and then I was planning our fairly large wedding, and then PoleCon came up for sale. I was part of a franchise and owned my own studio briefly. That's another whole hour. And during that, the previous owner of PoleCon said, she was no longer interested in running the event, and she was going to open it up to the franchisees to see if anybody within, kind of the smaller community wanted to purchase it. And I thought this was just kismet, that it was an event in an industry that I loved. I knew I could make the event bigger and better and run well because I had a history of running very complicated things. So I jumped at the chance and said, sure, I'm interested. Let's talk.
What changes did you implement to make it grow bigger and better? And
a couple of different things. Some things are pretty obvious from the front end, from the attendee. I organized all of the showcases into themes so that you could both know what to apply to and then also what you wanted to see. Mm-hmm. I reached out to all of I call them affinity groups. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but it's the one I keep using over the years, so maybe it'll stick. But affinity groups like Black Girls Pole, Dangerous Curve, so groups that were supporting and representing the even smaller portions of our small microcosm community, and got those folks involved. So that was a big change. And then in terms of the back end, as I mentioned, I used to own a visual communications company. So I've got a lot of depth in marketing and sales and advertising and all of these sorts of things. So I increased all of our marketing and advertising. I really gave it a professional facelift. and then instituted a lot of policies and procedures on the back end to make it more realistic for one person to manage everything. Because until PoleCon happens, the physical event, it's just me. We a lot. Tara's shaking her head at me right now. In disbelief. We all the time. The royal we at PoleCon do a lot of things, but really it's me answering all the emails, doing all the back end stuff. And I'm constantly trying to certainly improve that back end to make it more functional so that I can manage as the event continues to grow. And then also make it easier for people to want to buy, to want to have a good time, and also to make sure that we're adequately and accurately representing all of the different facets of pole, of which there are so many different facets of pole.
Indeed. One thing that I really appreciate that you do every year is, aside from the amazing showcases, which that's like a whole different topic, which we'll go into. But I really appreciate that, one, there's showcases pretty much running all the time. So if you don't want to do workshops the entire time you're there, you still have something to do. But on the back end of things, the survey that you put out after PoleCon is so important. And I imagine that gives you so much idea about what's working and what's not. What made you decide to implement that?
So my background is corporate. I added up the years the other day, and I've been in business for 21 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. It's a long time. And my background is again, really coming from that corporate side of things. And it's pretty normal to receive a survey after an event. As part of, I was one of the partners at 24 Hour Company. I created and managed our UK expansion as the managing director. I also, through the 24 Hour Company, was very involved in our trade association for our industry, which is the Association of Proposal Management Professionals, which is a mouthful and a very specific niche industry, much like pole. It also begins with a P, so that helps. And I was very involved on the board of that organization, both in the local chapter level, the National Capital Area chapter, as well as the international board, starting first as secretary and then moving up and becoming the youngest CEO, which is a volunteer position of the board of that organization. So I'm really used to, again, running things. And part of the APMP, what they do every year is they have a big event, and that has vendors and tracks and seminars and workshops and presentations and a survey afterward. So I really modeled a lot of the things that I wanted to do with PoleCon after what I was doing with the APMP, which we call that annual conference BidCon.
Okay.
BidCon or Bid and Proposal Con. So everything is on. And that I've even borrowed, I work with a woman who helps me source hotels. So there's a whole cottage industry. You can approach a hotel yourself and say, hey, I've got 1,000, 2,000 person event. How much does it cost? How does this work? Do you have any space? Or you can work with a industry that does that for you. So I work with a woman who helps me do all those initial proposals, and I got her from the APMP.
Very cool. Very cool. And with this feedback, what do you do with it? You get all these surveys back, you comb through it. How do you process the information?
I read every survey, every single survey, and we usually get a pretty good result back because I give people a free trip to PoleCon as the prize for one lucky survey respondent, and that includes the hotel and then the ticket. That doesn't include your flight because you might be flying from Australia, and that I'm not paying for that. That would be
No way.
No, not yet. Maybe one day. So I read all the feedback, and I really look and see where there are places that I can improve. And some comments I'm never going to improve on, and perhaps the only one is people say there's too much going on at one time. They say, they say, oh, I couldn't choose between the workshop or the showcase. And I'm like, yes, that's the point, is I'm giving you a trade association value that's usually, like if I look at the APMP conference, this was a $600-700 ticket. I'm giving you literally the exact same experience, minus a dinner, because I'm not paying for dinner, that they have, that I had when I ran the association, to you all for $195.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. So it's you know, so I'm always going to give more value as much as possible, and I'm always going to elevate the industry, making sure we are in nice hotels, that we are in places where we can feel elevated, that we can feel like what we do should be taken seriously, as opposed to, you know, shoving us all somewhere that maybe isn't as elevated. So I want people to feel like this is a good time, and that they should feel good going. But yeah, so I read every survey and I try to make adjustments. I've had some real good ones that I haven't even necessarily known, because of I'm always at the registration desk. So there's some comments I've heard about timing, about making sure things are lined up. So I've made those arrangements. Sometimes I get feedback like, oh, the wristbands, you know, or for people who have latex allergies, the wristbands are really bad. So we actually switched to cloth last year to see if that would help. We've switched the way that we do the waivers, so they're all digital, so it saves time when people are coming in. You know, we've made sure we have all-inclusive sizing when we do sell merchandise during the event. So all sorts of things, like little comments, big comments, feedback on workshop leaders. There's certainly workshop leaders that I haven't invited back because they maybe weren't the right fit for the event based on some feedback.
Yeah. I really appreciate that you comb through all of them. I'm sure that takes a ton of time, but I feel like it's so important to look at what your customers or clients or whatever are looking for. And again, like you mentioned, some things that we don't even get to consider had we not done that. So PoleCon has been going on since 2010, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So this was supposed to be the 10th anniversary, right?
Yes.
And can you kind of just give me a timeline of like how this year kind of unfolded? As it stands for PoleCon, I guess I should say.
Sure. I feel like this will probably resonate with a lot of people. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I listen to all of them. I think I'm all caught up. And I feel like a lot of people started the end of 2019 or the very beginning of 2020 going, this is my year. Yeah. I'm opening a second studio. I'm starting a new business. Things are off the chart, blah, 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 blah. And we did too, the PoleCon. So I do an early bird every year. The reason I would do early bird was the hotels usually require pretty hefty deposits. So I would do an early bird sale so that I would have the hefty deposit to pay 6 months ahead of the event. Otherwise, there's no real reason for people to buy in advance, right? You could buy day of, who cares? So I do early bird, and every year early bird is my indicator of how well we're going to grow. And typically the early bird I can track out, and we grow about 20% every year. And that's held up for the past several years. So this year, the end of 2019, I wake up bright and early on January 1st, which is the end of early bird, and it's also my birthday. So it's like a birthday present. How many people, bought tickets? And this year we were on track for 50% growth.
Wow.
Yeah, 50% growth. And so I looked at that number, and I had sort of two simultaneous reactions. One was like, woohoo! And the other was like, fuck, that's too many people. Because I only have space for so many people. When we have a showcase, the evening showcases, when we have the sexy showcase, particularly in Black Girls Pole, which is a huge draw, we have standing room only. I mean, people are crammed in because I don't have enough seats for every attendee, because most people are not going to be sitting in one place for the whole time. So all I could think was like, how am I going to cram any more people in to watch, especially the major showcases, let alone the free workshops and seminars. I mean, it was going to be great for the vendors, to have a 50% growth, 50% more people who could buy their cool stuff. So that was the beginning of 2020. And then I started to see things like in, March, maybe it was even late February, early March, I saw the Arnold was canceled, and that set PCS into, they had to run around and make all their changes. And I, at first, was like, God, that sucks. Like, somebody can just cancel your event. I'm like, oh, thank God it's just me. I can't, nobody can do that. And that's when nobody really realized how bad COVID-19 was going to be. And so then over the next series of months, I kept checking in with this hotel liaison, it's probably the best way to reference her, liaison, to see what she was seeing in industry. I keep in contact with my former colleagues in the APMP to see what they were doing about their annual conference, which is typically right around the same time as PoleCon, and just kept watching the news and saying, what are we going to do? So the first thing I tried to do was to move the event. We thought, okay, if everybody follows the rules and we can get this thing under control, then maybe we can have an event in August. And then it became really clear that we couldn't have an event in August. Yeah. So it's just been trying to figure out what's the best thing. And I started by saying no refunds, because that had been our policy all along, encouraging people to do transfers, which we've honored. And then I changed that as well, because it was the right thing to do, was to give, if you need/want a refund, then you should receive a refund. And it's really hard as a small business. And I respect that in our industry, there have been both smaller and larger businesses who've made different choices based on that refund question. And it's something that every business needs to make for themselves, because a lot of that money has already been spent, So it's very, very, very difficult, but it was a decision that I thought was the right thing to do. And I'm still kind of waiting to see how this is going to end up to see how many refunds versus people who were able financially to move their tickets to the 2021 event. Right.
Oh, thank you for all your work. I just, seriously, I'm just going to speak for the community right now. Thank you for all that you do, because PoleCon is such an important event. It gives so many people a sense of community and something bigger than themselves. Not having it just feels like a loss. I feel the amount of work that you put into it. I feel the back and forth, and I'm glad you handle stress well, because I imagine that between this and everything else you have going on, what a nightmare. And we're still in it.
Yeah, we're still in it. And it's I'm not gonna lie, it's been a lot of work to try to replan an event and get contracts out to people and talk to people who, again, some people were like, sure, I'll teach in August, why not? And other people were like, I'm just not comfortable, but I don't want to say no to you because I don't want to ruin the relationship. I'm like, no. Everybody's coming at this from really different perspectives, for health concerns, for financial concerns. I launched on the PoleCon website a page where people could go and find, how to work with PoleCon workshop leaders remotely during COVID. And we have the same for the PoleCon exhibitors. So that way, at least there was something we could do to try to help and get the word out about people, because so many people in our community have lost so much with everything that's going on.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that it's important to you to give them an opportunity to make their money too. I imagine that PoleCon is a huge event for traveling artists and exhibitors to be able to make some money in this community. And so not having that, I imagine, is hard for them too. So giving something so that people can find them, which if you'll send me a link, I'll be sure to add it to our show notes and put that up so anybody can access that. So currently, where we're at now is PoleCon has been rescheduled in person for 2021, but this year you're going to do a virtual PoleCon. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that is happening October 17th?
Yes, the Saturday.
Awesome. Okay, so can you tell me, what is that going to look like?
Sure. So I really resisted the idea of virtual for a long time. I teach virtually via Zoom and have been teaching throughout the pandemic. And now the studio as I'm at, we're kind of in a half online, half remote. And I really resisted virtual because it's a very different vibe. And I was concerned that people wouldn't get the same sense of community that they would get, that they typically get when they're in person at PoleCon. And I also didn't want to cut into anybody who was selling virtual classes online into their revenue and figuring out what was the appropriate pay scale, because everybody's offering classes from when this all started, it was just donation based, which I remember having a conversation with one of my students who kept one particular, I'm not going to say who, but he kept taking this one Polestar's free quote fingers workshop. And I said, you should tip her. You should tip her, especially
Right.
if you're taking all of these classes, like send her some money.
Right.
And he was like, but it's donation. I'm like, right, make a donation. So I'm glad that people are kind of getting a little past that and setting some guidelines, because in lieu of guidelines, I find people, just don't. So I resisted. I actually wrote a whole blog about why PoleCon would not go virtual. And I just sat on it, and then I changed my mind, because I mean, leaders should be able to change their mind when new information becomes apparent. I think that is important. And I realized that we need to continue to connect, that this is still, virtual isn't perfect, but it's better than nothing. And that there are some benefits. Going virtual, we can reach people who might otherwise not be able to travel due to cost, due to time, family commitments, et cetera. So going virtual could open up a lot more people being involved, which would be great. And for this particular PoleCon, I really wanted to focus on the pole business community. Now, watching everything that's been going on in our community, seeing how many studios have tried to apply for the various government aid, have tried to apply for traditional funding, who have not even been able to open their doors, but landlords are still charging them rent. It's quite clear that especially the government in the United States doesn't give two shits about small business, especially a small business that is primarily run by women and primarily run by minorities and primarily associated with sex work. So I wanted to create something that would help all of the people that are working either full-time or making a portion of their income in our community, and give them the resources, the tips, the tricks, the access, so that they could continue doing their business. So that's not to say that if you're just a pole student and you love pole, that's not to say that you won't find a workshop, a seminar, a panel, or a performance at the virtual PoleCon that you'll enjoy. I mean, it's all great stuff, but it is focused more on that pole business community.
Okay. So will there be, I love this, by the way. Again, thank you for putting in the work to make this possible. It's heartbreaking to see the studios struggling, people struggling. And so having a place where we can find resources and they're accessible, that's really, really important. With the focus more on business, are there going to be more panels that are around topics of business, or how are you going to bring more of that in?
Sure. So there's 3 major tracks. So what I've kind of done is taken the free workshop room at PoleCon and blown it up. So it is 3 times the size, and we'll have a whole track of panel discussions. So featuring all of the panels that we've had at PoleCons over the years. So things like the plus size pole dancer panel, sex worker panel, race and cultural appropriations panel, queer panel, and then we're also adding a business specific panel this year. Or this cycle. So it'll be a whole track of 90-minute panels. There'll be an additional track of seminars. So 60-minute seminars. So what I call a seminar is more talky, less doey. Yeah. And that ranges from all sorts of things like how to build a brand, to how to franchise your studio, to how to get a paid performance gig and what to expect from it. And then the final track is a track all of movement-based seminars. And those range from insights into continuing education. So we've got certification teasers from Expert Fitness, who does pole, aerial flexibility, all sorts of different certification programs. Liquid Motion that has a liquid teacher certification, and they've gone fully virtual. So they really know how to work this virtual thing, to how to apply makeup for your performance and how to do a warm up when you have no space for a warm up because you're about to do a show, to how to do some prehab and rehab when you actually can't take a rest day. You know, you're a full-time pole teacher. What is a rest day? We know we should take them, but we all don't. How to use those myofascial release tools. So those are the three main tracks. Again, some of this information is going to be useful to the hobbyist, not just the business poler. And then we'll cap off the evening with a showcase with representatives from all of the different PoleCon showcases.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So all of these things are going to be happening kind of simultaneously. Is that correct?
That's my MO.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah. So, okay. So how does this work? Somebody buys a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
They say, I'm coming to PoleCon, virtual PoleCon.
Mm-hmm.
They see the schedule and there's all these things. Where do they go and how do they get in?
Sure. So I've looked at a lot of tools. There's a lot of different tools. There's a lot of ways to run events. And I've settled on a tool called Floor. And the way it works is that you buy a ticket, and then you'll get an email about 24 hours before from Floor with your unique link to get into the event. And you click that link and you'll go in and you'll see an actual floor plan, much like you get if you went to PoleCon, and it would show, here's the floor plan, here's the workshop room, and here's the booth. We also have booths. We so far have about 12 exhibitors who've signed up to have booths at the event. And everything is based on video. So you would go and join, the plus size polar panel, and you would see panelists on screen talking to you. Now, you might want to jump out of that early. That's a 90-minute panel because you want to join a session that's only a 60-minute session, and you would exit that room using my quote fingers again, and then you would join another room for another topic. So you can continually bounce in and out of the different rooms, the different topics. There's a chat function, so similar to what you might have used in Zoom or Google Hangouts. There's also a networking component where there are little tables throughout the floor where you can go sit at a table and either invite your friend by typing to them and saying, come, I'm at table 12, or just sitting there and waiting for another poler to come in and meet a new friend. And you can also visit these virtual booths, which work again similarly on this video chat function. You'd go to the booth, click, you'd see a logo and say, okay, there's the logo, click. And if the booth person is there, I mean, it's a 12-hour event, so they're probably going to have to use the restroom at some point. But if they're there, you can ask them questions, you can chat, or you can get a link to their website to go check out their stuff. Some folks will be offering discounts on their merchandise during the event. Other folks will just be there to chat and help give you more information about their product or service.
Very cool. I like that. I took a look at the layout. You released a video kind of showing like how it would look. And I think it's really cool. When you look at it, like you said, it really shows that the full scope of the event. You can go through and click on the different areas, and the booths had a couple of tables set up at them, so you could just pop in there. I really love the way that it flows. How did you even find this this interface?
Oh my God, so much research.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of just the Google, right?
Cool.
And being in the event business for so long, I get a lot of unsolicited emails from people who have tools. So I've sat on a lot of sales calls, and a lot of the tools were very expensive. They're designed for the bigger entities. And I really wanted to make this very affordable because I want people to be able to come and to, pop in and out. Maybe you stay the whole day, maybe you don't. So in order to keep it affordable, I needed this tool, which I didn't expect to have to pay for to be affordable. So Floor was really great because it's based on attendance. I'm not just buying the tool, but I'm paying per head. So that's a lot easier because then, if I have more people, I pay a little more, but then there's the revenue that will cover that expense.
Right. And how much is the ticket for PoleCon?
It's $50.
Nice. Very nice. That's awesome. So there's going to be workshops, showcases, different panels, and this is actually being presented by the trade association.
Yes.
So yeah, you're starting a trade association. Can you tell me its name and a little bit about it?
Sure. So in addition to all of the things I started off saying that I do, I am also
Just adding more to it. No big deal.
oh, why not? I found an extra 15 minutes.
Right.
I'm now also the executive director of our industry's first trade association, the International Pole Industry Association, which is a mouthful, so I'm just calling it the IPIA. So a trade association, this is typically, you see this in certainly blue collar and white collar trades. Blue collar, you might also know them more as unions. The idea of a trade association is to gather folks together who have a vested interest in a particular industry, provide them resources, networking opportunities, and because now there is a group of people who do one thing, also provide research and advocacy work that supports that industry. So my goal with the IPIA is to provide that help to our businesses, to our pole businesses that we're not getting from other places, that we're not getting from, local and federal governments, that we're not getting from some of the avenues that are available to us, and to help business people who maybe don't realize they're business people in our industry. I see often people posting in like the Facebook groups, I want to start a studio. How do I do that? Give me some comments. And, I'll be a little Southern here. Bless their heart. That's if you're asking a Facebook group that kind of question, you might need to do some more research. This might not be the thing to do right now. Maybe you can grow into this. So providing a centralized set of resources on everything from how to start a pole-based business to really pole-specific issues. How do you talk to a landlord about what you're going to do? I ran my own studio. I worked with commercial landlords about finding a new space, and that was hard.
Yeah.
I applied for grants and loans that I was rejected for time and time again because of, the pole's association with adult things. And that can be tricky to navigate. So I really wanted to create this resource for our industry and give us a place to also discuss, and really that advocacy, finding the things that are going to make the most sense for our industry. And I look at our industry in 5 major demographics. One is whole business. So you own a merchandise business, apparel, grip, event, competition. You're a whole business to me. You might be a solopreneur, you might have a team. Then there's studios. Studios are a very particular kind of entity because you almost always, maybe nowadays not so much, but almost always have to have a commercial space, where a pole business might not. You might be able to be virtual. Then you've got instructors. So full-time pole instructors or part-time. Maybe you're an employee, maybe you're a contractor, maybe you tour, maybe you don't. There's a lot of concerns there. Maybe you're a full-time performer or actor. You're the one getting hired to, perform for Snoop, the one who's, hired for the Super Bowl. You're the one who's the pole dancer in the background of a CSI episode. And then the 5th demographic, of course, is strippers and sex workers who are having additional and different challenges during this whole COVID-19 pandemic, as well as, issues that have come forth with legislation that is blocking their work directly, and then tangentially some of the work in the pole community that isn't part of that, let's see, on the other side of the Venn diagram from sex work. So those, I think, are the 5 main demographics we have in our industry, and I want to make sure that we've got resources and information for everybody, and then that we can do appropriate advocacy that's going to represent anything from, business interests all the way down to, how can we identify and educate legislators so that they're not making laws that negatively impact our community.
Right. This is really interesting. So what type of resources will you make available?
So starting small, I do want to make sure to set expectations that this is, I wish that my magic wand worked.
It doesn't?
It does. People think that it does, but it doesn't. It's literally me behind a keyboard, typing. This is going to take some time. So to get going, to provide this, to help educate everybody in our community about why this might be important, and then start to educate the external world about how they should treat us and how they can interact with us. So this is going to take time. So in terms of starting small, when you become a member of the IPIA, there's a small fee to become a member, and that gives you access to the online resource library. Now, these are all different posts that explain everything from, how to do SEO for your website to what is a feature performer and why might you want to enter a strip club competition? How does that differ from a pole dance competition? What's the business case about why you would want to do this? You want to become an actor and be a pole dancer on TV. What are some resources to find there? What's an employment contract? Should you have employees or should you have contractors? What happens for your own taxes? Tax law has changed and employees can't write off deductions for their W-2 employment the way that contractors can. So whole bunch of resources, many of them free, some of them behind the paywall for becoming members. There's also online forums. Now, I know there's plenty of forums right now. People use Facebook, whatever. These are private, so they are only accessible to members. So this might be more useful for people who want to have maybe, a conversation that not everybody can see. There's also member discounts. So I'm working on negotiating discounts with different companies that are relevant to the pole industry. So things like, equipment, continuing education, insurance. These discounts are very much a chicken egg kind of issue. The insurance folks, they want to offer me a discount that I can pass on to the IPI members, but they want to know how many members we have. We have 0 members. Well, how many members will you have? I don't know. I hope a bunch, because this could be really helpful. And the more of us, the more attractive we look to other organizations who are going to be willing to work with us in terms of discounts, in terms of partnerships, in terms of access. So those are some benefits. And then additionally, there will be webinar series that people can join during Zoom with topics that are going to be relevant to people. So things, again, like online marketing. How do you do your online marketing in a way to get out there? Prehab and rehab for people who have to use their body all of the time. So that'll happen at least once a month. I'm going to see if we can do that a little bit more frequently. And then, oh boy, my whole list of things. I had to get my cheat sheet up for all my list of things.
Yeah.
And the final thing is really that advocacy is working toward what are going to be the best ways to address the issues in our community. And our community is pretty broad. If you look at the international community, a lot of these resources initially are going to be focused on US things, simply because that's the depth that I have. So in terms of, how is the IPIA being started? Well, it's me again. So it's there is only so much time in the day. And then as this starts taking shape, then I'll be able to get more information from more contributors, and we'll means test some of these things and keep the resources updated so that it is relevant across different jurisdictions and across different things as life continues to change.
Right. So with the advocacy, is that reaching out to legislation and working with them to kind of fix some of the misinterpretation of what we do, or?
It certainly could be. I see advocacy as a broad term, where it could be everything from we've identified these groups that do work that aligns with ours, and we will make a donation to them.
Okay.
It could also be we are providing white papers to legislators to explain how legislation is positively or negatively impacting the community. So there's a little bit of that, more of what I think of as traditional lobbying work, although we wouldn't have a lobbying firm because that costs $1 bajillion. I used to have a friend who did that, but providing information, providing other people information where here's how to call your congressperson and here's what to say. Here's the email to type up and write. This also has an element of when there's pole dancing in the news, who does the news media contact for the official word on what pole dancers say or believe in. I've been on local news a couple of times for PoleCon. So whenever PoleCon moves around, often, we reach out to local news and say, hey, we're going to be here, you should come check us out. And I prepare a press release with some things that I think are important to highlight, which mostly includes things like diversity and inclusion. And local news comes and shock, that's not what gets in the local news.
Right.
Sometimes we get some good sound bites, but a lot of times the way pole is introduced is with this very, you can see the news anchor like, hey, ladies, like, we're going to talk about the and you're like, fuck you. Like,
right. Seriously.
So creating a resource where they can come and actually get, information and again, treat us with respect. That professionalism, comes, it's internally that we respect each other and we work toward a code of conduct and a code of ethics as an industry and how we treat each other. But then also that will reflect with how the external industries treat us and the media treats us as well. So again, there's a lot of, chicken or an egg. There's a lot of things that are going to feed on each other, being able to do our own research and pay for people to do research that might be relevant to our industry. Things like salary surveys. How much do you pay, a pole dancer? What can you expect to earn as a stripper? Everybody's got these crazy numbers that they throw out. Is that reality? Like, have we actually done a survey of the industry to see, we haven't, but we could and we will.
Right. So there's a bunch of different factors in this and a bunch of different tracks. How will you choose members to serve the board? Because I imagine that this will be run by a board. How will you choose your members to make sure that you're including people that have a diverse background so that we can serve these people?
Yeah, it will have a board. So the IPIA is set up as a nonprofit, status pending. That takes a little bit of time to worm its way through the IRS. So it will
1C3.
So this is more, yay, paperwork. So that's in process, but we will have a board. I'm going to start with a 6-person board for this year moving forward, and that will all be appointed. So I'm working on now reaching out to people in the industry who work in one of these 5 demographics. So that way I can make sure that I've got some representation on the board. Then the next year I'll add 6 more and we'll have the full 12-person board. That will also give us a time for people to see what the IPA is about. And at that point, we should be able to do a board election so that people in the membership can actually vote on those potential new board members, which is what I would prefer. But again, we're kind of chicken or an egg. Like I need a board,
right,
but I don't have any members to vote in a board.
Right.
So,
right.
And then board members will serve 2 years per term. So there'll be some nice, there'll always be kind of a cycle every year, but we'll maintain some, brain trust, people who know how a board works, because there's very particular ways that board meetings, following Robert's Rules of Order are supposed to go. You bring things to the table, you motion, you second, etc. So we'll follow all those and then make sure that the meeting minutes are accessible to members. I'll publish an annual report every year so people know where the money is going to and how the money is being spent. I've been very transparent with PoleCon, even though PoleCon is not, actually a nonprofit. It just feels that way to me.
I bet.
But it's I've posted a blog on what the costs are to run PoleCon, and I will be, continuing that with the IPIA as an official nonprofit.
Yeah. Speaking of cost, what do you think the cost will be for membership?
So trying to keep everything real affordable, right? I want this to be something that people can actually do. So I've set up 3 different tiers. So one tier is for individuals. So this is an individual person, or it's just you running your business as a solopreneur. So that's $60 a year. For, I'm calling the studio or business, for 2 to 5 people at $160. So if you've got 5 people, $160 is a pretty good deal, instead of each person purchasing for $60. And then I've also included a student membership for not pole students, but for people who are students, in a university college type scenario that are interested in learning more about our industry. And I've received over the years a handful of people doing research projects for school. So I know that there are people in, higher education that are interested in our industry.
Yeah, very cool. I like that price point. It feels affordable. And definitely for a studio, I imagine there's going to be continuing education and multiple things that would be beneficial for a full studio to have access to.
Exactly. And you can, as a studio owner, you can write that off on your taxes. Any trade associations do.
Yeah, exactly.
As an independent contractor, you can write off on your taxes. And if you come to the virtual PoleCon, you can add on a membership to the IPIA at a deep discount. So this is the virtual PoleCon is really my membership drive for the IPIA to get people involved and to check it out. Say, hey, can you spend $30 for a half price membership and get access to these things? See if it makes sense. Contribute to the industry. I do ask that all people who become a member of the IPIA read our official code of ethics. Our code of ethics is very common in trade associations, and it's I described it earlier on a phone call to someone in industry as the "don't be a dick."
Yeah, right.
The IPIA will not say that you have to follow certain business practices or prescribe anything like that, but very basic things like conduct business in a respectful manner, deliver on business commitments. And I've also included that for people who have a complaint against an IPIA member, you can submit that complaint, and then the IPIA will work as a third party to help you and the member who you're having this challenge with discuss how to move forward. So that way we can work.
Why did you do that? Why is that important? I love that. Just
so I really think, and this is a word that has a lot of weight and a lot of feelings around the idea of professionalism. That being a professional, people kind of have two reactions. Either they're like, fuck that, who cares about that? That's not me. Like, I'm a free spirit. Or they think, well, of course I'm professional. Like, who are you to tell me that I'm not? So I feel like there's a lot of energy around this word. But what I'm looking for is more a way that as an industry, we can start to have a baseline understanding of how we can all work together. Pole is a really interesting industry in that we're all working together, but because we all love pole, there's also this feeling that we all also love each other. And while that can absolutely be true, that doesn't necessarily mean that you also get along with everybody or that you like everybody. It's almost more that difference of like a family. Like, I love my family, but they drive me crazy. So we have to set sort of baseline boundaries of how we're going to interact. And particularly when you start involving money, it's very complicated. Even as I mentioned earlier, my good friend, she runs a studio that I work at, and there's moments, and I'm not talking out of turn because she knows she's going to listen to this. She can be like, yeah, that she drives me crazy, absolutely crazy. And that's going to happen. And I need to be able to separate. There are issues and things that we need to work on in a professional relationship versus our friend relationship. And this is always a challenge. It's a challenge in other industries. Ours is not unique. Ours just feels like it's more magnified because this idea that, you come to pole class and you're laying your soul bare and your body bare and you're remaking yourself in this amazing empowerment, whatever thing. And then somebody says something to piss you off, and suddenly there's a comment war on Instagram, and there's a level of, we still all need to work together as professionals. We have to set this. So the idea of the code of ethics is to start that conversation of how do we work together, even in those moments when we don't like each other, when we have beef, but we provide a way of working forward as if we were, colleagues in an office scenario. And then I wanted to offer something that had a bit of teeth to it, that this is not just some something that like, oh yeah, like I saw it, like I clicked it, but whatever. But if someone actually has an issue, that we talk about it. Now, more, I want to foster conversation because I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to say, oh, person A is right, person B, you should give them the money back, or you should, make up, or you should do whatever you should do. No, but having a third party can sometimes help have these conversations. Is there always going to be a great resolution? I'm an optimist, but I'm not that optimistic. There will always be a resolution, but at least we can talk and have these interactions, and it just doesn't become this, especially like very public call out culture and things like, let's have these conversations in a way that is respectful to each other, to the industry, make a path forward, and recognize that we're all here to make Pole successful. That's why we're all here.
Right. Absolutely. And how will the trade association be different from PoleCon?
So I've said chicken and egg like 14 times, but it's true. There's a lot of figuring out what has to come first. And through my experience with the APMP, as I mentioned, typically trade associations, they provide all of these things. And in terms of providing education and networking opportunities, they often do that through having a major annual conference. The realtors have one, the pole professionals have one. So when I took over PoleCon, I remember having this conversation with the executive director of the APMP, and I said, one day I will have a trade association because this is what we need. But it was too early. That if I had, at the time, no one knew who I was when I started and I took over PoleCon, and it was a challenge to get people to believe me. Then people didn't know who I was, and they had some bad interactions when PoleCon 2014 was canceled. Some people lost money, there were some hurt feelings, there were some other issues. So people had a much more negative impression of the brand and then had no idea who the hell I was. So it was all really a crapshoot. So I knew I couldn't do it then. And I've been sitting on this idea for a long time, knowing that, there was never a good time to do this, and worried that people would be receptive and people would understand, or, that I wasn't trying to change anybody for the bad or take over, but actually make this a space that we could all benefit. So anyway, PoleCon will be under the IPIA eventually. So PoleCon will become the industry's annual event, which it already is. And usually these things go the other way. You have a trade association, then you have an event, but we had an event and now we have a trade association.
That's interesting. Oh, it's so cool. It's been around, this whole idea coming all this time. That's really exciting, I'm sure.
Terrifying is probably the word I'll use. I've had a lot of great conversations with people trying to get some feedback about this from people in the industry that represent, across the 5 different demographics. It's most of what everybody said is positive, that this is something that people are looking for. It's the devil's always in the details of, seeing if we can get enough people to be involved that this starts to have an impact.
Right.
The good news is I'm a super long-term person. And I remember after the first PoleCon, I went to Pole Expo, and I was talking to my insurance guy who was also at Pole Expo. And he's like, oh, so you're planning a 2016 event. Things must have gone real well for 2015. I said, no. I said, no. I mean, everybody had a great time. People loved it. Like, the people who came, they had a wonderful, wonderful time. But I lost a shit ton of money.
Oh, wow, really?
Oh, fuck. I've lost so much money on PoleCon. Over the year, lost, invested, depends on the day. And I said, no, but I believe in this industry. And if I'm going to do, I'm not going to just do something once. Like, nothing ever works the first time, ever. So I'm committed to PoleCon, and I'm committed to the IPIA.
I love it. I'm committed too. You made me a believer.
Yay!
Yeah. No, but I do think the way that you're laying this all out is going to help a lot of people. And I can tell you just from doing this show, the response that I get back is, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or this helped me be able to figure out how to, you know, do this or whatever. So I think it's definitely needed. I mean, it's terrible when a studio is suffering. It's terrible when we're struggling. So having these resources in one place and not all over, and you have to know so-and-so to track them down, is going to be really essential to us being able to grow more. So yeah, I love it. So the first event that they are presenting is the virtual PoleCon, which is happening October 17th.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And there'll be a showcase that night.
Yes.
And that's going to be people that are representing each of the major showcases from PoleCon.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And if people were almost at the end, oh, I have to ask you my questions. So yeah, we are at the end of all my questions. Thank you for giving me all this information and sharing with everyone else. I'm really, really excited for virtual PoleCon, and I will definitely be there. Now the questions I ask everybody, and I'm gonna come visit you again so you can pick somebody else the next time, but what is a favorite performance of yourself?
My favorite performance, I did a performance to Weird Al's White and Nerdy, where I started off as a ballerina, and it's quite clear in my movements that this is pole comedy, which is what I often perform to pole comedic things, and it's quite clear that the ballerina is not good, not comfortable, keeps messing up. And so the ballerina gets really pissed off and, you know, takes off the tutu and takes off the frilly pink top and turns around and is got like the kind of typical 1980s nerd with the glasses and the tape. And I dance to White and Nerdy.
That's
now. So that's my favorite, because I've often felt like I was not a dancer, that I've had a lot of trouble fitting in terms of my own personal movement journey. So I wanted to express to all of those other people who felt like they didn't quite fit in, you know, just do you, boo. Like it's fine.
I identify so much with that. Is there video of this?
Yes, I've actually performed it a couple times. I performed it for a PSO. I performed it at PoleCon 2016 in our inaugural pole comedy showcase. I've performed it in studio. I've performed it a couple times. It's a really fun little routine.
I love that. And your favorite performance by someone else?
So whenever I need a little pick me up, because it's hard to sit behind a desk all day and try to manage all of these things and know that you're gonna please some of the people some of the time and none of the people all of the time.
Yep.
When I need to pick me up, I really like to go back to PoleCon 2015, and I watched Anne Marie's performance.
Yes.
Yeah, I watch Anne Marie's performance. She gets topless with no pasties, so she's not on our YouTube. She's on our super secret Vimeo channel, which allows nudity. I love this performance for a couple reasons. Anne Marie, I've known Anne Marie for a couple years before that, so I was really happy she was able to come. And at that time, you know, she was running UPA and was still a leader in our industry. And I asked her to perform, and she came up to me and right before and said the pasties that she ordered didn't come. So she was only going to get down, you know, to her bathing suit-ish thing, whatever, her onesie thing. And I said, well, you know, if you had wanted to perform without, you know, topless, like, whatever, I don't care. And she's like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? And at that time, like, the hotel didn't specify any sort of nudity requirements. So we just didn't tell anybody, kind of in that ask forgiveness. And she performed and turned around and she was topless and the whole crowd went nuts. And I've heard people now reference it as a moment where the pole dance community started to get a little bit better about that whole not a stripper bullshit that happened, and start to realize, like, we are one community, and the way to respect us all is to respect us all. You know, people often ask me, like, how can you have a youth showcase and a sexy showcase where people get down to their itty bitties. And I said, it's really easy. You treat everybody the same. Everybody gets the same billing. Everybody gets the same access to the same amazing stage. Everybody gets the same awesome stage manager experience. You just do that. You don't say like, oh, no. Like, no, everybody gets the same. And I love that. I love that performance. And people, this is the big secret. People didn't know that I knew. They thought that she just pulled one on me, but no, we talked about it.
Yeah.
And I love the song too. I mean, everybody should watch it, but there's the song, she did a mashup, and the second song is about the pole community, that pole, that Pete, who was the graphic designer for Bad Kitty, wrote. And it's this amazing rap about us. And he talks about, you know, the move, the calf kisser, and he talks about PSO and Pole Expo and PoleCon, and I just think it was so cool. So anyway, that's my favorite performance.
The performance was so good. I remember, like, you know, like the next day, I wasn't at that one, but the next day hearing about it and just being like, you have to go and see this video, and just seeing her so out there and just up front showing it off. Like, it did make me, because I think I was still kind of new. I had been dancing for like 2-3 years, and I didn't really understand the why I shouldn't say that I wasn't a stripper, why that was important. And I came from a studio that was very much the fitness side, and that it was sexy, but it was very much, we're doing this to work out. And so when I saw that, it was jarring for me at first, but now I look back at that moment and being like, that's it. That's what made me start seeing this differently. So, you know, thank you for giving us a space to perform in not a pressure situation, and giving a space where we can really express ourselves to the fullest. You know, the showcases, hands down, Black Girls Pole is the best show I have ever been to in my entire life, not just in the pole community and the industry, ever. It is the best show. And the sexy showcase, like all of them, they're so much fun. And it really gives it's like a rainbow. We've got like a rainbow of different types of people, and we get to see all of them at your convention, at the convention, you know? So thank you for having these spaces and staying up, I'm sure, endless nights and working and doing all these things. That's important, and thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so if people want to find out more about the IPIA, where can they go?
They can go to poleassociation.org.
Awesome. And to sign up for virtual PoleCon?
Also on the poleassociation.org website.
Perfect. And is there anything else you want to mention at this point? Talked about a lot of stuff.
If anybody has any feedback, if they want to get involved, you know, please let me know, especially with building the resources for the IPIA. There's a million possible resources. And right now I'm writing a lot of it. I've had a couple of people contribute some posts. I'm asking if people can volunteer. That would be awesome, but only if your financial situation allows. And if your financial situation does not allow, I'm paying a small stipend to help build the resource library. If there's a resource that you read and you're like, wow, this is really out of date, or this is really bullshit, or you're missing this, just tell me. I consider this living documents. You know, life is changing all the time. Links to resources are changing all the time as well. So I like to think of myself as a pretty open book. I share a lot of information, usually through the PoleCon platform, either through videos on our social media or through writing blogs that you can look all on PoleCon under the category from the HBIC. And, you know, if you've got comments, questions, concerns, issues, please let me know, because my whole goal, I'm realizing that I've had a lot of careers, and I'm realizing that my purpose in life is to help people. And I am honestly, some days, not sure why it's pole, but I just love this community so much that y'all are my people and I want to help you. I want to make everything better for you. I want us all to be successful. And that's not marketing. That's fact. And so I can only do that if you keep reaching out to me, because I'm not seeing every corner of social media where stuff bubbles up. I'm not seeing, every issue, and I want to help as much as I can.
Same. Oh my gosh, that was perfect. Totally agree. Okay, well, people are going to reach out, and we're going to see everybody at the virtual PoleCon on October 17th.
Yay!
Yes. Thank you so much for taking the time and answering all the million questions. And I'll see you when I'm on that side of the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Aerial Hour. I hope you learned something new, or learned more about your favorite artist, or at least had a relaxing time. If you want to know more about this episode, head over to theaerialhour.com and check out our show notes. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Aerial Hour, and write us a review on Apple. This really, really helps us, and it also just makes my day. I really, really hope you guys are enjoying this project as much as I am. It is truly a labor of love, so I appreciate your patience as I still continue to learn things on a regular basis. I think that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
So in addition to all of the things I started off saying that I do, I am also
just adding more to it. No big deal.
Oh, why not? I found an extra 15 minutes.
Right.